Hi everybody, this is my 7th video journal entry for digital literacies. This week our readings that we did and are going to discuss are from Iman, Medina, and Pimentel, Butler, Piano, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Boyd, and Arula. Every time I see that name, it makes me think of arugula. I digress. Anyway, the the three pieces that I focused most on were the Butler, the Boyd, and the Arula piece, and that's because I had a common connection or something that really got to me in those three, and starting with Butler, which I know Janine Butler was a PhD student here, also deaf, and she works a lot with disability rhetorics. And with her discussion through her article on captioning, it really got me thinking about the idea of how, as a society as a whole, I know some groups have tried, but as a society as a whole, we tend to retrofit our differences. And we don't try to adapt with them and adapt to difference. We think of difference as this little island way out that we need to try to bridge to, that none of us can relate to. And we need to think of that it's really in amongst all of us. I am of the belief that really there is more atypical people than neurotypical people, even though in general, if you're atypical, it seems like, ooh, you're that person in the crowd that has something wrong with them, and it's not good. But no, there's more people with a lot of different things that they are dealing and battling with. I led a panel discussion last week at the Peel LGBTQ Center on campus, talking about the intersections of queerness and disability. And we discussed at the beginning that disability can mean physical impairment, can mean mental impairment, can mean behavioral impairment, can mean a more hidden health impairment that isn't physical, and it can also mean ailments that you were born with or have come along with health issues, or something that is because of an accident. So you could have been more neurotypical but have became atypical. And a lot of the students were like, oh, I didn't think of me being a person with a disability, because I always thought it meant a person who couldn't hear or a person in a wheelchair. And that's because we put difference on an island. And then when it comes to disability advocacy, or for the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's all about advertising the most impaired and the most, this is disability. And there are so many more things with disability, and we need to think about those differences right from the beginning. And that's really what Arula and Arula, Butler, and Boyd all focused on a lot in different ways, because Butler is talking about closed captioning and talking about the differences between captions and subtitles, and how we need to think of not retrofitting them in, but something that is a part of that conversation automatically. She talked about the liberal arts school that's blanking my mind, that our speaker also talked about, that was here for the weeks on campus. One of the only F liberal arts school in the country in Washington, D.C. and how they focus more on the subtitles being a part of the art and not just something that's tacked on. Arula focuses on social networking for Indigenous populations and seeing that, okay, there was not a space that allowed Indigenous populations to create their own space. So they then created their own outside of Facebook, and then has the discussion about, well, what if we did try to use Facebook, but then it would be retrofitting and not adapting because they didn't have that there. But what if Facebook would have had places for that already? But it wasn't built for that. It was built for that middle class, middle of the road. It was not built for the poor populations because don't have access to technology and they just expect that. It does ineffectively take that group of people out. And then with Boyd discussing the natives to technology, about how we just expect younger generations to automatically know everything about technology, and because they're the group of people that grew up with it, we expect that they're automatically efficient in everything and can know how to interact with it. But that blind side has opened up a gap where we have a young population that knows generally like a lot of things that they are told about technology, things that they find along the way, but some things are untrue when it comes to things like don't ever use Wikipedia, that Google is better. And I remember a lot of those conversations when the Wikipedia and the internet became more popular when I came up K through 12. And that is something, too, where it's like we're not thinking about, okay, they have this technology, they're getting it pretty much as much as they can start to move and talk and everything, so we should teach them early on and not just be like, okay, expect them to do this, but now we're realizing we have to retrofit and go back and retrofit that difference, because we realize, yes, they did grow up with it, but they still need to learn digital literacy. It just doesn't pop and it's there. How many people would expect? Because this is a good example, even people that are older or grandparents can learn. My 88-year-old grandmother has learned how to call me and my aunt on Skype on my dad's iPhone. It took a few months, but with my dad helping her in different things, and she can hold the phone, she can move it, she can flip the camera to the other side to show it the other things that are going on. And that's that digital literacy aspect, because she's being shown. Because we're automatically expecting from that old generation, they don't know anything. They can't do it. So then it's automatically that uphill battle of okay, we have to try to teach this elderly person to try to use technology. But if we teach them, it's going to be there. But we also can expect the younger generation just to have it. That whole idea of difference really got through each of those, and specifically with going a little bit back to Butler, as I kind of finish up here, talking about closed captioning and captions and things, and those are great conversations to have, as well as building compliance for ADA with making buildings more accessible. I still feel though that certain disabilities like deafness to a certain extent, blindness. I don't know. I'm saying that right. That doesn't sound right. Blindness, being blind, and like physical impairments, like being in the wheelchair, really dominate that scene for disability, and we need to be thinking about that. We need to be thinking about how we can get other people with disabilities into the conversations. Disabilities that aren't out there all the time, that aren't the poster children for disability offices and ADA, and that we are being compliant and we are helping people with differences. There are a lot of disabilities like speech impediments that don't get a lot of the publicity, don't get a lot of education, don't get a lot of like universal design when it comes to digital spaces. Education, we're doing better with adapting and changing with that, but we automatically think of deafness and blindness right off the bat, but we don't think about people with speech impediments. We don't think about how we could allow them to better interact in digital spaces, to work with their disability. There are so many instances where it's like I have to have my parents help me, all the way up through K through 12 in high school and college, and even now, because there are certain companies that they only talk on the phone, and I have a hard time talking on the phone, and a lot of people don't have patience. Sometimes, if I have a hard block at the beginning, it'll be hello, 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 hello. Is anybody there? And they hang up, and I try again and again. They hang up, and I've had that happen for job interviews. I've had that happen for calling student loan companies and calling cable companies and dealing with calling companies that I've contracted to like move a couch that I just bought, which I did last fall. But so much is so phone based, and I have to feel like I have to rely on other people to help me because those digital spaces aren't open to me. And some places like Banks will have the questions, but you can only ask the questions that the computer knows. And then if it's a harder question, you have to talk to the real person on the phone. Well, why don't they have a digital chat system with a real person? This whole obsession with privacy has really gotten crazy because we think that we're going to protect our privacy and everything, but that comes into a hindrance of allowing accessibility for people like speech. So it's like, oh, well, we can't have a chat function, or we can't chat over email because it's safer to do it over the phone. Is it really safer to do it over the phone, or is that just an excuse? So, yeah, we aren't thinking about doing those adaptations. And in some places, we aren't even thinking about the retrofits. But if we have those conversations as a whole, like just because, okay, we're doing this because you have a disability, and we're doing this to allow more people for more options to communicate in a more holistic sense, with places like technology differences with youth and with elderly and with people with disabilities, with multiple different differences, and then with different ethnic groups like indigenous populations, trying to think more holistically about how we can bring them into the fold, not just like slap a band-aid on it and move on and say, okay, we've helped them. No, really bringing them into the conversation. I look forward to talking about these pieces this week, and I'm glad I got to kind of poke at them a little bit. See you later.